Cliff Richard loved one woman 50 years. She married his best buddy, then another, then died in his arms. He never married or had children, simply sang while burying British music's worst tragedy. Police invaded his home in 2014, but they weren't the first to destroy him. BBC had negotiated a covert pact. Allegations were false. The devastation was real. His weight dropped. He had shingles. He couldn't sleep. Home felt tainted, he remarked. The former Wembley Stadium crowd pleaser was frightened to leave his residence. King George's Hospital in Lucknow, British India, welcomed Harry Roger Webb on October 14, 1940. War and upheaval were already raging. World War II raged. Indian independence protests erupted. British families fled the colony after Direct Action Day violence in 1946. Among them were Webb's. Harry's father worked in colonialism, but by 1948 the empire was falling. Instead than driving or flying, they took a slow, crowded ship across the Indian Ocean. Their lifeboat was SS Ranchi. Over 3 weeks, it carried hundreds of British families who had left their own home. The servants in sunshine become rationers amid dismal sky. England was frigid and post-war. The Webbs moved into a tiny Carshalton, Surrey house. No more spacious rooms and warm evenings. A boy from comfort had a terrible start, but it toughened him. That adventure gave him a yearning to show himself and make something more of this odd new life. Harry Webb soon vanished. Harry Greatorex watched intently. He was a talent manager and trend spotter. He advised Harry to choose a rock-sounding name. He recommended Cliff, British sturdy, Cliff-like. Richard, a tribute to the wild American rock musician Little Richard, followed. Harry Webb left. Born Cliff Richard. Besides changing his name, he transformed British music. The song Move It debuted on August 29, 1958. It was loud, raw, and defiant. Not like the clean, polite pop of the day. Cliff 18 was young. The song's second UK chart position caused a stir. British teens now had a rock star. He didn't copy America. He invented something. That song paved the way for others. The Beatles, Stones and more. It wasn't just music. It was mania. Britain went insane when Cliff toured that year. Screaming, crying and fainting girls. Boys disliked him for hogging attention. Security couldn't stop the throngs. It was Elvis-level craziness. It was London, Manchester, and Leeds. That had never happened here. They dubbed Cliff hysteria. Newspapers adored it. Record labels did too. In 1959, crazy doubled. Cliff released Living Doll. He didn't want to. He believed the song was too soft and false. I loathed it, he informed his producer. The band turned it into a slow country ballad. It sold 770,000 copies and topped the charts for 6 weeks. November brought him a silver disc. He got gold in January. Next arrived Travel Light, #1 again. 5 more weeks on top. Together sold over 1 million records. Nobody else in Britain had done that. Hollywood called. Cliff appears in 1959's dark, tragic, serious Charge. It wasn't fun. It tackled homosexuality, deception, and moral dilemmas. Cliff was 19. It stunned everyone that he joined. A year later he starred in Espresso Bongo, a music business satire. These roles showed he wasn't only an adolescent star. He wanted to act, grow and go beyond singing. Never before have British pop stars done that. Summer Vacation followed. The picture premiered in London on January 10, 1963. 3,000 fans filled Leicester Square. Cliff couldn't leave his automobile. He missed his premiere that night, but it didn't matter. The soundtrack topped the UK albums chart before the film opened worldwide. It lasted 14 weeks. First-place tracks from the film include The Next Time, Bachelor Boy, Summer Holiday, and The Shadows instrumental, Foot Tapper, tops the rankings. It was 1963's second biggest British box office blockbuster after From Russia with Love. In the same year was named the UK's most popular film star. The Beatles followed. Most expected Cliff to disappear. Cliff had 6 top 10 hits in 1964. During Beatlemania, the Beatles got 5. He remained famous with songs like Constantly, On the Beach and I Could Easily Fall in Love with You. Cliff stood firm at home while the Beatles revolutionized music and conquered America. Battle was real. His film Summer Holiday and The Beatles, A Hard Day's Night clashed in theaters nationwide. Both broke records, but British audiences remembered who came first. Not even Paul McCartney denied it. According to him, the Beatles left for Hamburg because Cliff had everything figured out in Britain. Lennon stated it clearly. Before Cliff Richard and Move It, England had no good music. Unexpected events occurred in 1965. New Musical Express polled readers worldwide. Fans selected the world's best male singer. Cliff defeated Elvis, Lennon, and McCartney. That year the Beatles released Help and Rubber Soul. Cliff defeated Elvis, who was still selling out everywhere. Why? Cliff evolved despite the world shifting around him. He didn't imitate the Beatles. He avoided trends. He balanced pop ballads, real charm and faith-friendly movie. His consistency, that meant a lot to fans worldwide. Before and after the British invasion, he was their rock. Nobody expected what transpired in June 1966 in the music industry. Cliff Richard and Billy Graham stood on stage at Earl's Court, not to sing, and tell thousands he become a Christian, not merely a private choice. This courageous testimony was televised nationwide. Fans who saw him as a British Elvis or Little Richard were shocked. Some wept, some stood incredulous. They were shocked by the change in the rebellious man they adored. This moment wasn't random. Spiritual adventure that began 2 years earlier ended. Still, performing it in front of Billy Graham's large crowd during the swinging 60s gave it a gravitas no one could deny. Religious discussion was forbidden for rock stars at the time. They were to revolt, test limits, and defy regulations. Cliff's announcement defied pop icon expectations. Many panicked immediately. Fans assumed his music career was over. Industry insiders suggested he quit and teach. That notion was close. Cliff considered retiring from the stage. He thought he couldn't be a good Christian and famous. Music journals speculated on his successor. Booking agents retreated. The industry thought you couldn't be spiritual and famous. Both Cliff and I were uncertain at first. But suddenly, something changed. Cliff remained. He stayed. Thus he invented something new. He kept his religion and music. His solution was to blend the two. The first big UK pop star to openly practice his faith while charting. No one had done that. Not like this. He showed you didn't have to choose. You can be honest about your beliefs and still sell out concerts. The choice went beyond career survival. It transformed him. Cliff eventually acknowledged to faking his rock and roll image. He was uncertain. Just a pretense. That changed after becoming a Christian. He said, I gained confidence. My outlook changed. Always being right wasn't important. The need to contribute vanished. He could be himself. His newfound confidence helped him perform better. Even as the Beatles and Mersey Beat ruled the charts, Cliff strengthened, while others strained to keep up. He felt like himself again. Cliff's career declined in the mid-1970s. For the first time, Elvis had no charted songs in 1975. Many believed his time was up. Devil Woman followed. The April 1976 song was loud, edgy and darker than his others. A bizarre psychic story was told. A wandering cat. Much more importantly, it rocked. It reached number 9 in the UK and 6 in the US. His first top 10 in America. Over 2 million copies were sold. Cliff returned. Even more shocking, the hard rock mob adored him. Jimmy Page, Eric Clapton, and Elton John wore I'm Nearly Famous badges to promote his comeback album. Guitar legends honored a once clean-cut and antiquated man. Cliff's new CD was compared to Marvin Gaye's Greatest by one critic. Not just a comeback, but a complete makeover. The 1950s youngster was now a serious rock star. He continued. With 25 years of experience, Cliff launched Always Guaranteed in 1987, a timeless pop record without the decade's tacky synthesizers. Thriller inspired him to work with Alan Tarney again. The result? A platinum record. It spent 24 weeks at number 5 in the UK and sold over 1.3 million copies. 4 album singles reached the UK top 40. Some went silver, selling 250,000 copies. Cliff competed with the greatest in the late 80s. Christmas 1988 followed. Cliff published the lovely faith-filled holiday song Mistletoe and Wine. He recorded it in summer with tinsel over the mic. The single debuted at number 7, rose to number 1 the following week, and stayed there for 4 weeks. It sold 750,000 copies in 6 weeks, and outperformed U2, Kylie Minogue, and Phil Collins as the year's biggest UK hit. It was platinum by 2024, and earned $100,000 in royalties. Even decades later, they craved it. One of the best occasions was May 1989, published his 100th single. Never before had a British artist done it. To celebrate, he invited 2,000 followers to the London Palladium. He presented 6 unpublished songs and requested votes. He picked the second-place song, The Best of Me. It reached number 2 in the UK, and was certified silver. Internationally it reached number 2 in Ireland, 25 in New Zealand, and 59 in Australia. Not just reaching 100. Maintaining relevance as the industry shifted was key. Cliff Richard's June 1989 Wembley Stadium concert was special. An incredible spectacle. The event lived true to its name. It was packed at Wembley. Thousands came for more than music. It was Time Machine. Cliff paid tribute to Oh Boy, his 1958 career-launching TV show, throughout the opening part of the event. Cliff performed with others. He hired the Vernon's Girls, Dallas Boys, and Kalin Twins, British rock and roll legends. Fans felt like they were entering a living jukebox. The second half began. Cliff proved he wasn't just a nostalgia act then. He played his latest successes with the conviction of a decades-long chart topper. Rolling cameras. The concert was carefully videotaped and distributed as a live album and TV special. Not simply a gig. A well-planned historic occasion. The Bright Award's highest accolade was given in 1989. Great musical contribution. It wasn't just a trophy. It signified more. He was the only performer to have number 1 hits for 5 decades. The 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s. He'd released 100 singles by then. The 100th was my greatest and topped the charts. Cliff had 65 top 10 hits and 14 number 1s. Nobody else came close. Another milestone occurred on June 30, 1990. A year later. Large Nordorf Robbins music therapy charity event at Nebworth Park. Cliff played with the Shadows. In a legendary lineup: McCartney, John, Floyd, Clapton, Genesis. Phil Collins and others performed. Crying for Concerns brought rain, but the audience stayed soaking and sang. Cliff stood with rock's biggest names and proven his worth again. December 1990 followed. The song Savior's Day debuted. Chris Eaton wrote it in October 1989 and offered it to Cliff at a Rolls-Royce Christmas party. Cliff listened to the sample in the car and stated, "This is #1. He was right. After debuting at number 6 on December 8, it rose to number 3 and then number 2. It overtook Ice Ice Baby at number 1 on December 23. In beautiful September, Durdle Door and Swanage residents sweated in winter clothing while imagining it was Christmas in the video. But the result was spectacular. The momentum continued. Cliff released his greatest hits CD private collection, 1979-1988. Around that period, multi-platinum sales exceeded 1.2 million. It was his biggest record. We Don't Talk Anymore sold approximately 5 million copies worldwide. Retained his name on all British radio. Not simply nostalgia. He sold more than new pop stars. He led a fast-changing industry. But then something unusual happened. Cliff released Millennium Prayer in 1999. Mainstream radio disliked it. BBC Two wouldn't play it. They said it wasn't popular. But they played Tina Turner and Cher, Cliff's Ages. The Beatles were dropped by Radio 1. Chris Evans of Virgin Radio called Cliff too old. DJs needed specific clearance to play the tune. Fans raged. The Cliff fan club demonstrated outside the BBC. It felt like the industry had abandoned him. The miracle then occurred. The Millennium Prayer reached #1 without a major label, airtime or machine. For 3 weeks, not one. From November 28 to December 19, 1999, it was his 14th UK #1, 40 years after his debut. Fans bought multiples. It had church backing. A protest, not just a hit. Cliff had defeated the system, and not only in the UK. The song peaked at #2 in Australia and New Zealand. It reached the top 20 in various European nations. 3 nations rated it platinum. No radio airplay or heavy promotion, just fans of the music. It raised significant funds for Children's Promise. Cliff showed you could have faith, raise finances, and top the charts. Cliff has heartbreaking personal stories outside of music. Cliff Richard invited teenage Australian vocalist Olivia Newton-John to play on It's Cliff Richard in 1971. She was 22. They had instant chemistry. Cliff remarked, "I knew she was a lifelong friend immediately." He was right. For over 50 years they were close. Cliff fell in love with her, but the world didn't know until his 2020 memoirs. I and many others loved Olivia, but she was engaged to someone else. My chance passed. Cliff never married. Olivia seemed to leave an indelible mark. Everyone who knew her fell for her. He said, who she was engaged to complicated this scenario. Cliff's shadowy bandmate Bruce Welch. Olivia met Bruce in 1968, as the opening act. Early on, their relationship was explosive. Bruce remained married. Their affair was publicized. They were engaged for 5 years but never married. Olivia worked with Cliff, touring and singing alongside him. Bruce became depressed and self-harmed after she left in 1973. Rumors spread. Was she smitten by Cliff? They never spoke, yet the stillness was terrible. Cliff and Olivia performed through the emotional storm. Fans recall their duets from 40 years ago. Their 1980 Xanadu hit was one of several. Live performances included When I'm 64 and other oldies. Cliff often stated Olivia had an elegance no one else could match because their voices mixed so naturally. Cliff's 75th birthday event at Royal Albert Hall in October 2015 included their final duet, One Last Time They Sang Suddenly. Cliff with Strings, My Kinda Existence, debut in 2023. He honored Olivia with that live recording. Next came the hardest part. Cliff called Olivia 3 weeks before her death. As usual, she was pleasant and cheery. "Hi Cliff, dear, how are you?" she said. It didn't sound like she was dying. After that call, Cliff wrote, "I never believed I'd write this." Olivia fought breast cancer for 30 years. She was strong yet never showed her pain. Cliff was devastated when she died on August 8, 2022. "I loathe that word," he said, alluding to death. Instead he said she had died. He dealt with her silence this way. Cliff Richard turns on the TV while relaxing in Portugal on August 14, 2014. His heart stopped at what he saw. Television showed helicopters hovering over his Berkshire home and cops searching his possessions. His initial idea was simple yet chilling. Not a robbery, but they look like burglars. The police raid was broadcast worldwide. Thanks to a BBC South Yorkshire police secret pact, the BBC was informed beforehand. Even internally, it was called the money shot. They wanted drama. They understood. Cliff Richard was ruined. The 77-year-old national legend had a spotless record and decades of music experience. Now he was kneeling in the kitchen, crying. The photographs were everywhere, from UK to Australia. Cliff sobbed as he read out the countries that aired his private life's breakdown in court. He later said tension made him fear a heart attack or stroke. One allegation started it all. A man in his 40s claimed Cliff assaulted him at a Billy Graham rally at Bramall Lane Stadium in 1985. That rally was big. Over 5 nights, 200,000 attended. Cliff joined Graham on stage to support his Christian mission since 1966, but the accusation quickly collapsed. The man said the incident happened in a sports equipment room. The issue: that room didn't exist in 1985 and the sporting gear was housed elsewhere. Still, cops pursued this for 22 months. They rejected statements from their own cops watching Cliff that night, who were with him the whole time, not even interviewed. The investigation lasted nearly 2 years, cost taxpayers $800,000 with no charges, not one, but the harm was done. After the live raid and numerous headlines, the BBC filed its Scoop of the Year coverage. Yes, the broadcaster placed the raid footage into an award competition while Cliff was under investigation. The BBC received $20,000 in aggravated damages for that ruling alone. The court deemed it rude and demeaning. The bodies kept piling up behind the scenes. Cliff later admitted to depression. Some days he couldn't sleep, other days he couldn't raise his arms. He had shingles. His weight dropped. He collapsed from fatigue. He reported feeling unsafe in his home. Even producing an album or advertising his book was impossible. All halted, because the world saw him as a headline, not a guy. One of the oddest moments followed. A man tried to blackmail Cliff after the raid aired. He demanded payment and threatened to lie if not paid. Strangely, his original sex abuse claim was investigated after he was arrested. Cliff was considered as a legitimate victim even if someone tried to blackmail him with the raid. South Yorkshire police agreed tipping the BBC was illegal and awarded Cliff $400,000 in damages. Their apology was public. Even million-dollar court payouts and apologies to erase trauma, and they did. After paying Cliff damages, the BBC spent roughly $2 million in legal fees. Cliff was unhappy with prosecutors' decision wording. The CPS found insufficient evidence to charge. That wasn't enough for Cliff. He desired documentation. No trace was found. The veil of suspicion that anything might still be there troubled him most. "I feel tarnished by the BBC, not the cops," he stated. In court he broke down again as he explained his dread of being forever contaminated, despite being cleared. Even if he was innocent, being named publicly had destroyed his eye contact, he told MPs. The damage was done nonetheless. People constantly wondered. He had every cause to consider that. His name was on front pages. While cops eliminated useless evidence, his face was shown. Only one raid and rumor remained of his life's work and a media circus. He defeated the BBC in July 2018. The judge decided that Cliff had a reasonable expectation of privacy and that the BBC had infringed it in a severe sensationalist fashion. British media reported police investigations differently after the ruling. Cliff never focused about winning, about survival, about proving his misfortune wasn't unfair. It was cruel. 2 years of his life were lost. He never got rid of the headlines, looks, or the idea that his name, no matter how clean, would always be shadowed.